What's up everybody, Couch Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video, and in this video we're going to be breaking down 5 overpowered agents to abuse before it's too late. These are going to be characters that are so damn powerful that they can win you free games if you learn to master them, and they're definitely on the chopping block for a potential nerf in the future, so you got to make sure to cash in while it's hot and master these agents. But go to the GameLeap website in the links down below for high quality in-depth advanced guides and VOD reviews over every single agent in the entire game. You got to go check it out right now down below. But without further ado, let's jump into the video, shall we? Now, kicking it off with number 5, a character that has been just climbing the pick rate in pro play and in ranked matches alike, and it's Killjoy. Now, while Cypher is a really strong character, he's getting less and less pick rate, and Killjoy is getting more and more. Killjoy is so unique in what she brings to every single team, and her abilities are so damn powerful just by themselves, even if you take out the gunplay of a Killjoy. It's absolutely insane that this is a character that can not only gather information, stall, but in a 1v1, she's actually absolutely nuts, because you see, one of the big things that you need to do up against a Killjoy as an enemy team is consistently bait out her utility and consistently get rid of her things like Alarm Bot, Nanoswarm, and harass her turret. Well, in the average ranked game, that's going to be really hard to do when people aren't on the same page, no one's doing their job, people aren't putting enough time and work into baiting out all this utility. And then on top of that, in a true 1v1, being able to use your turret and play around it and force enemies to actually deal with your turret, you can find information about where they are, is extremely powerful individually as a character. But the one thing I would highly suggest for you to understand about Killjoy is ultimately, it's not about necessarily killing the enemy, it's about playing for your win condition. Whether that means stalling the enemy, whether that means using your turret to find out where they are, jiggling around them while the clock ticks down, or using your nanoswarms to deny defuse, deny plant. These are the win conditions that you should be playing for on Killjoy, not necessarily always just trying to wipe the enemy team, because you could set up scenarios where you put more and more pressure on the enemy, clock's ticking down, they can't win the round, so they just keep making mistakes, and you're constantly putting pressure on them with your utility as well. Now we go to the next agent that actually has the highest win rate pretty much across the board on average, and it's a character that kind of has been a sleeper, but has slowly been seeing more and more play, very powerful even in pro play, and it's Sage. Now the way that pro players are playing Sage is actually extremely interesting and something that you should be utilizing in your ranked play, and it's almost like a duality of the character. You see, traditionally we thought that Sage should only be played extremely passive, right? She has a heal, so she should stay alive as long as possible, get as many heals off on her teammates. She has slow, so she should just play in the back and deny enemies from taking space. And yes, she can do a lot of these things, but the thing about Sage is at a moment's notice, Sage can actually play aggressively, and it's a type of mix-up with the character. Recently in the no duelist meta by Liquid and EU, you see Scream actually pop off with Sage, and he does do the stalling. He creates pressure on choke points, and he prevents enemies from just rushing in, but a lot of that is to actually dictate his own engagements. Oftentimes you'll see something like enemies will be pushing in through a choke point, right? He'll actually ice it off, and then he'll go on an alternate angle or even a flank to try to get some value on the enemy proactively. Because Sage has her own heal, even if it's not that great, she does have a tiny bit of sustain that's on a cooldown where she can trade with an enemy, take some damage, and then heal herself back up to near full or actually full, and then she can take another engagement. And that way, Sage can play this duelist sentinel hybrid where she can take matters into her own hands, but at the same time provide some team value as well. And I do think that there's a reason why Sage has such a high win rate. It's just she's good on multiple axes. She's good automatically with powerful ultimates, powerful abilities. She's good when you're trying to play with your team, and she's good individually as well, where you can go on these proactive plays. So all these combined make her really one of the best characters you can climb with in any game of ranked. Then we go to the next overpowered agent that we got to talk about. It's an agent that has been seeing more play in NA, always has been seeing play in freaking Korea, and is seeing quite a bit of play in EU as well, and it's Skye. Now, the thing that you need to learn how to do on Skye right off the bat is just pop flashing, right? If you throw out the bird and you pop it right around the corner, it is so fast that even some of the best players will not be able to dodge it. A lot of times people want to fly the Skye flash really into the enemy backline and then pop it. Way too easy for enemies to freaking dodge that when they see it it flying. You want enemies to literally make LOS contact with the bird and it's already popped, right? Think about the LOS from where you think the enemy is and where they can see, and the second the bird pops into their LOS, you instantly pop it, and it's like a pseudo pop flash that you can do with Skye, and you can use it to swing angles, challenge, and be really proactive. Now, on top of that, something else that you can do with the bird is you could slide it along the wall, and then you can disable you controlling it, so you can whip out your gun, and a lot of times enemies will either shoot it or they'll freaking 180, and you're not planning on popping it. You're just gonna kill them when they're just turning on something that is not actually intending to be popped. That could be a way to really mess with enemies. And overall, I think Skye is one of those characters that you can play kind of selfishly in ranked. I'm not saying that you should always do that, and I think that taking point control is really powerful with the character, but she has an X factor where you can pop flash enemies and challenge them yourself. You can find out where enemies are with your dog, and you can make plays yourself without needing that synergy. And even though the character is a synergy based agent, it doesn't mean you have to play her that way every single time. Now, that being said, one of the biggest mistakes that people are making on Skye is flashing your teammates, right? You gotta be really hyper cognizant of the LOS of your bird and where your teammates are. It's really easy, just look at the mini-map, make sure that you are not full blinding your allies, and most of the time, if you're gonna be blinding your allies, it's better to just not flash at all. Now we go to the next character that we got to talk about in this video, and it's our number 2 agent. This agent has just exploded in popularity recently in the pro meta, and I think that the rank meta is going to follow suit, so you should definitely master this agent as quickly as possible, and it's Astra. People are quickly realizing how powerful this agent is, and it took the pro meta to show us why. She just has so much stalling ability, and I think that Astra's a character that can perfectly hold a site completely by herself. A lot of times Astras try to do too much. They're putting smokes all over the map, they're trying to help their team across the entire area, and while that can be really good, especially when you have teammates that work off your utility, what's more valuable, in my personal opinion, for ranked play, at least some of the lower ranks, is completely locking down a site solo. Astra can hold sites that no other character can, and she can do it and just completely lock it down. Think of something like Haven A, right? Most characters would need a second person there to hold that, but Astra can put 2 stars on both choke points, put a freaking one-way star, and now she got that shit locked down like Fort Knox. Essentially, there are a few characters in the game, if any, that can stall the same way that Astra can and can hold her own the same way that Astra can. She doesn't want to be too proactive though. You want to be playing behind the site, play off your utility. You are one of the most powerful characters based on the utility alone. So if you take the gunplay out, Astra just gets so much value automatically. So trying to get at as many abilities as possible, making duels less about just straight up 1v1 challenging and more about setting up scenarios where you are favored using your utility, that's the way that you're gonna thrive on Astra. And for those of you who think, okay, she's amazing on defense, what about attack? She can do everything a controller can do and more. Being able to not only smoke off really important angles that you have to challenge, like a heaven when you're playing attack, but being able to actually concussion or flush out the back of sight. Let's go back to that A Haven example, but let's talk about attack now. You could effectively put a freaking concussion in the back of the site so that you force enemies either out of that spot or they get concussed. You can smoke off the top, you could smoke off the entry from spawn onto point, and now all of a sudden there's so many less angles that your teams have to deal with. You smoked off the sites, and if you think about that, all the things that you're doing, typically 2 characters would need to be able to do that, right? You wouldn't be able to do this all with 1 agent, but Astra can. And it's gonna become more and more apparent just how powerful this character is. So definitely jump on the bandwagon right now and grab your free wins, man. Now moving on to the last agent that we got to talk about, we have to talk about Viper, and she is definitely completely busted right now. And for those of you who are Viper mains, y'all earned this, honestly, because you had to deal with Viper just being absolute dog for way too damn long. But Viper right now is absolutely nuts, and I'm gonna tell you why. The biggest reason that Viper is nuts directly comes from the recent buff that happened where you automatically take 50 damage if you touch her smoke as an enemy. Now I want you to really think about that. For touching a smoke, what happens if a Phoenix like throws a molly on the ground and you want to get by it, right? You typically either wait it out or you run through it, but if you run through it, you take a pretty decent chunk of damage. It's not gonna kill you, but it's gonna do quite a bit of damage, and in that same way, Viper's freaking smokes are absolutely similar. Just touching her smoke is like getting hit or walking through a freaking Phoenix molly. And because of the fact that it prevents enemies from pushing or heavily punishes them from pushing. It's like AoE on a cooldown that you can use over and over and over again. Being able to defensively put up a wall that puts pressure across multiple points where if enemies walk through, they're gonna take a lot of damage, but most of the time, they're not gonna walk through. And then being able to cycle your snake bites with your smokes in tandem means that you could stall for a crazy amount of time and your allies are going to be able to, utilize their freaking abilities a lot more. Instead of a brimstone, like, instantly having to molly the choke, the second enemies walk up, he's like, oh, fuck, I got a molly, and then he doesn't have it anymore. Your smokes actually will alleviate a lot of the pressure on that character and allow him to better utilize his abilities. Let's take a Sage, for example, right? Instead of having to, like, pop her wall, pop her slow, pop it slow, she can get your wall up, right? Your smoke wall comes up, it's delaying or denying enemies from pushing because they really don't want to just tank all that damage. Now, as it goes down, she can slow. And then by the time that's up, you can rise it again. And it's like a cycle over and over, and you're ticking down the clock for the enemy. And eventually, you're going to force them into a scenario where they really don't want to go into. They're either going to be pushing through your smoke and taking a chunk of damage, or they're going to be pushing in when there's so little time left where you can really disrupt that with a number of different abilities. Viper is not only amazing just at stalling, she has an ability to split freaking maps straight down using her toxic screen. She plays amazing with another controller as well, because she kind of fills that controller sentinel hybrid, and Viper is really a phenomenal character right now. I think that she's an amazing character to play in ranked, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit of tweaking to her down the line, but for now, she's definitely a character that should be on your radar as a character to pick up and play because she's absolutely nutty right now. But go to the GameLeap website in the links down below for high quality in-depth advanced guides, VOD reviews, tips, and tricks. We got so much damn content on the GameLeap website. You absolutely have to go check it out right now down below. But thank you so much for coming by. Hope you enjoyed the video. I love your faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.